So we'll move now to Katie Burkhart, who's a Belfer International and Global Affairs Student Fellow and a Master of Public Policy candidate at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Katie.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm very excited to be here. Just want to say a quick thank you to Hatla and to the Iceland School of Energy students who've been incredible hosts to us visiting students, and also to President Grimson and the Arctic Circle Assembly team who really carved out a place for academics here at the Assembly. So today I'm going to take a little bit different track, talk about fish resources specifically, but talk about them in relation to security. So we could talk about any one type of maritime resources, whether it be oil and gas, but today I'm just going to talk about fish. And with regards to maritime security, we're going to talk about redefining what that means. Because I think most of you will probably think of maritime security and think about the safety of our ships at sea, the protection of our mariners. You'll see threats to maritime security as pirates, and you'll see the solution for making sure we have maritime security as our navies. You probably think of, you can see here Captain Phillips, which either supports or perpetuates the idea that maritime security is about the protection of these commercial interests, and that in order to defeat the threats of maritime security, we need a naval response. Now, I'm a former US Navy sailor, and so I really enjoy the glory that the Navy got from this movie. And I'm very proud of the work that the US Navy has done, as well as all of the partners who are working in Somalia to fight piracy. My last deployment in the Navy was off the coast of Somalia. We were able to contribute to the counter-piracy mission. The pictures here are from the USS Philippine Sea, rescuing the crew of motor vessel Brillante Virtuoso after an unsuccessful pirate attack. So I'll say again, I'm very proud of the work that's being done, and it's effectively almost eliminated piracy. We haven't had a successful pirate attack off the coast of Somalia in 18 months. But in my many long days and nights at sea, I couldn't help but ask the question, what if we had done something earlier? Is there some way that we could have prevented the enormous economic loss? In 2011, when I was in the Western Indian Ocean, there was $6 billion in economic cost lost due to the piracy just in this area. In the last few years, there have been over 1,000 mariners taken hostage, been victims of violence because of this situation. And there are still 25 mariners being held in Somalia. They've been captive for over 3 years. So I think it's really important to me and to the broader community to ask, what should we have done before we needed the Navy to respond? And this has really motivated my research into the root causes of the main problems of maritime security. And specifically focusing on the case of Somalia, we learned that there's a huge role of fishing, and specifically IUU fishing. I'm talking about illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing. Because in 1991, in Somalia, the central government collapsed, and their system for creating licenses for international fishermen was no longer valid, and they no longer had a way to enforce any laws in their waters. And the waters are full of fish of all different types. And so what happened is that the international fishermen that were already there now were fishing in an unregulated and I would call irresponsible way. They started to reduce the fish stocks, which influenced the fishermen, and even more importantly, they started dumping toxic waste into the waters, directly impacting the livelihoods of the Somalis. They took up arms against what they thought were pirates in their waters. That violence escalated, and after their first successful ransom, they turned into a very fruitful maritime crime organization. So even though there are lots of factors that went into it, at the very root, Somali pirates were first fishermen. And so I've been trying to think about this link between IUU fishing and piracy. And it's not a simple link, it's a very complex link between the factors that go into piracy, whether that's state strength, as well as your ability to control your waters. Plenty of things go into it. But even if we could think about the complexity of that relationship, it's hard to get data. And so I welcome your feedback as to how to approach this question, because really meeting some challenges with data. by definition, IUU fishing is hard to track. And there's incomplete pirate data because a lot of pirate attacks or maritime violence go unreported in order to keep the insurance costs low. I've started to explore some alternate ways to research this question, thinking about the destruction of fish habitats due to climatic impacts and whether or not that induces piracy. So what does this all mean for the Arctic? Am I implying that there's going to be piracy in the Arctic? And one could use tell a story about how an increase in shipping, an increase in the interest of fish resources in the Arctic could drive us to the point where we might have Arctic pirates. Now, I'm an optimist, and so I don't think that we're going to get to that point, and I don't think we're going to get to that point because of the spirit of collaboration that has been pervasive throughout this conference. I believe that that can be manifested in smart policies. Now, if my hypothesis is correct, that there is a link between IUU fishing and maritime security, there are some obvious policy recommendations. And there are experts in the audience who can talk about what these policies might look like much better than I can. But one thing I do want to call attention to is that the problem will not be a local problem. We cannot just say that the resources need to be managed well in the Arctic, but that states who import fish also have a role because of the global nature of trade in fish resources. So my goal here is not to scare you into thinking that there's going to be piracy in the Arctic, but really I want to cause you to think about maritime security in a different way. I don't want you to think about maritime security as something that's the job of navies to respond to. I'd rather you think of maritime security as it relates to food security, to human security, so that when we can think of innovative ideas like the ones that Jack just proposed, because if we don't implement smart policies, think innovatively, then we are going to find ourselves in a position where we need the Navy to solve the problems. And if we get to that point, in my opinion, we have failed. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to your engagement.